It's happened during what is seen as when the establishments have been in crisis, and it's certainly happened over the Middle East.
Can I interrupt you there to give you a quote that Greg gave me? It illustrates how frightened the BBC's editorial and executive management is of offending Zionism. This is the quote. "We live in fear of the incoming call from the Israelis. When it comes, we ask ourselves only two questions. From what level did the call come? The embassy press office, the ambassador himself, or, God forbid, the government in Israel? And to what level in our organization did it go? To my immediate boss, to the Director General, to the Chairman." Now that was said to Greg by a very, very senior BBC News editor.
Absolutely right. They're terrorized. They're often terrorized. I mean, people I know within the BBC, and particularly say on the BBC Radio 4 Today programme and others, they get these, whether or not they're getting them now, but I know it was a blizzard of calls.
The emails and the phone calls.
The emails, the calls, I've had them myself. All of us who try to tell the truth about the Middle East, we get this blizzard of intimidation.
And it can be 10, 20,000 emails, letters and
I
phone
had
calls.
that. I had more than that. So following my program on Palestine, which was, most of the witnesses in it were Israeli, actually. But the idea that decent Israelis were speaking truth to the outrage of Zionist power was just intolerable. And
this is just too much hassle for busy working journalists to put up with?
Yes, it is too much hassle in many ways, because my producer and I, in order to satisfy the Independent Television Commission, which decided to inquire into it, I'm not sure they should have, but they did decide to do so, we had to write what was virtually a thesis, a doctorate, on our program, on our sources, on how historical, we had to defend the integrity of the program.
Just because there was 10,000?
Because of this blitz. I have to say, though, that when we counted up the emails, and we should always draw encouragement from this, the majority, and this was suppressed at first, the majority supported the program and were absolutely delighted. And that was a program that went out on ITV. Now, the majority arrived over a period of time. The blizzard arrived instantly.
And they're very often the same text, John, aren't they?
Well, there's an organisation called Honest Reporting, a sort of ironic title, but they are based in New York, and they produce a generic message, email message, which they then send out to all their people all around the world, Jewish people from Australia to South Africa. So in this blizzard were emails from people objecting to a program that none of them had ever seen, nor did they know anything about. And you put all the emails together, you can see that they're written by one organisation. Now, the same organisation hit Susan Goldenberg on The Guardian, Orla Guerin on the BBC, and myself and many others.
And this is, to use your word, it's straightforward intimidation.
It's intimidation.
All right, let me suggest to you, see if I'm naive. I've always thought that our editors, newspapers, television and radio, they could easily trump this intimidation card. I say all they ever have to do is to get together, summon the various agencies of the Zionist lobby, whatever you choose to call it, and say, we are simply not frightened of you anymore. We're not going to put up with it. And if you threaten to withdraw advertising or whatever, we'll tell our readers and viewers that too.
It can't work.
Am I naive for thinking that?
No, when I was attacked, I made my film, Palestine Still the Issue, for what was then Carlton Television. And its chairman was Michael Green, who's a Jew.
Sure.
Michael Green, unbeknown to the production people and ourselves, saw a preview copy of Palestine is Still the Issue, and informed the Conservatives for Israel and the embassy and a few other people, and we found ourselves, senior executives within Carlton and ourselves, facing a fight with the chairman, who of course under the rules in this country was stepping well beyond his brief. The good news of this was the ITC did look into it and found that the film described the film as having been historically accurate, living up to the highest standards of television and full of integrity. In other words, it was a wonderful vindication for us. But the interesting thing was there was a group of people who were doing the very thing that you're suggesting they should, who were senior production executives within Carlton Television who stood up to Green, stood up to their own chairman. And that helped us a great deal. So it does work.
So
I'm not sure the same thing could work in the BBC. I think the BBC is far more political organisation and far more sensitive to establishment needs, of which Israel is one.
what if the newspapers did it? If they spoke as one and said to the lobby groups, we're not frightened of you.
Yes, well, that would work. But, you know, pigs could fly, too. That's not going to happen.
So you think it could work, but it isn't going to happen?
It's not going to happen.
All right, let me put this to you, John.
I think any form of intimidation, and I think these days the intimidation of pro-Israeli forces against honest journalism can be seen off.
Yep.
And I agree with you, it needs collective action, it needs people to stand up to it, it needs people not accepting this disgraceful smear of anti-Semitism.
What the Gentiles need to know, the mainly Western Gentile world, is that there is actually a difference between Judaism and Zionism.
Mm-hmm.
Zionism's great success has been to conflate the two. So if you criticize Israel, by definition you're anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Now, in fact, when you know the difference, that they are total opposites, you understand why it's perfectly possible to be passionately anti-Zionist without being anti-Semitic.
Well, of course.
That is the key, is it not, to understanding?
Yeah, and it's understanding that Zionism was, invented such a short time ago, whereas Judaism has a long and proud humane history, whereas Zionism was something that was invented as part of imperialism.
You know, in simple words, Judaism is the religion of Jews. Not all Jews, because not all Jews are religious.
No.
Zionism is a colonial ideology